Good afternoon, Professor Theodor.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you for your coming. And in your speech just now this afternoon, you mentioned the goodness. Yeah. So can we just continue or talk goodness?
Yeah, happily. First of all, I'm very happy to be here. This is a wonderful conference, which is very much in line with what I'm doing, of actually reviving ancient philosophies, specifically Indian and Chinese, and trying to bring them or make them into a contemporary applicable philosophy. Now, the gunas is something very interesting in Indian philosophy, specifically Sankhya and Yoga. The gunas are qualities which try to grasp the subtleties of life. Usually when you try to grasp objects through logic, we cannot grasp the subtleties. For example, this is a table, but maybe it's a little dirty, or maybe it's a little scratched. So how do you grasp that? And the gunas, they can describe these subtle qualities which characterize the various objects of this world. So there are three gunas. One is called sattva. Sattva is purity, transparency, goodness, they say. One is called rajas. Rajas means active, passion. And then there's one called tamas, and that is more slow, more dark, more shady, more passive, if you like. And the Sankhya philosophy sees the whole world as a kind of interaction between these three gunas. And in many ways, there's also an ethical system there, and the ethical system leads one to act in sattva in a balanced way between the other two gunas.
So what's the usage of this balance? What can it lead to?
Well, as you know,
what's the role of the sattva here?
What's that?
Yeah, what's the role of the sattva here to balance the rajas and tamas?
I think here the comparative study with Chinese philosophy is very important, and even helps to understand the Indian philosophy, because in Chinese philosophy you have a yin and yang, which are in Taoism, which are also similar categories in that they grasp the subtleties of the various phenomena, and the yang is more active, the yin is more passive, and so forth. And you have the Tao, which shows the way in between, the way of the junzi, of the gentleman, of the aspired person, not only in Taoism, also in Confucianism. There's some correlations there, and within Indian philosophy, it is quite similar. You have tamas, rajas, but then sattva paves the way through which to walk in life. And in many ways, and that's again, I think, a contribution of this comparative study, that I'm trying to show that in Indian philosophy, you also have the concept of the junzi in Indian terms.
You mentioned the sattva path.
Exactly.
Yeah, pave a path. So path to what?
This is the path to find oneself in the world in every situation. There are many subtleties. It's not like a straight road. It requires sensitivity under each situation to see what is the path, what is the right thing to do. In the Indian version, you have the term dharma, which refers to a set of cultural requirements, conditions, normas, how you should behave in that circumstance, just like in Confucianism. And once you see this comparison, you can see that the sattva is just like the Tao. It shows how to behave under any circumstance. And if you like, dharma is like the li, the ritual, or also the norm in a wider sense of what is the expected behavior under any circumstance.
Yeah.
And it serves as a compass, as a way to guide the human being in life. So I was very excited when I started studying Chinese philosophy, and I realized that it's not only interesting for the Chinese, but also the Indians can learn from Chinese philosophy and read the Bhagavad Gita in a new way.
Yeah. And you mentioned Taoism just now. Taoism, we know that is one idea of Wu Wei, that's act on nothing.
Yeah.
So is there a similar idea in, you mentioned the Bhagavad Gita, this is your book exploring Bhagavad Gita, philosophy, structure, and the meaning of this book.
Yeah.
So is there any similar idea?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Thank you. There is the idea of Wu Wei is the Taoist application of pure action, action, enlightened action, action which doesn't agitate, which paves a pure path, and in a sense, it's a natural action. It doesn't go against one's nature, but it is pure. And the Bhagavad Gita has a similar notion of pure action. And for that, one has to understand the ladder of action in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is grounded in the performance of one's dharma. Dharma, I mentioned before, like li, ritual, duty, norm, and so forth. But one can purify one's motives and sublimate one's motives step by step. And that's what characterizes the Bhagavad Gita's ladder of action, that one can perform one's duty from a very gross or low motivation, but one can sublimate it and start to work for others' benefits, starts to work out of duty, just like the Junzi acts out of duty and not out of profit. And when one reaches a pure mode of action, one acts in harmony with nature, and one doesn't create karma. In the Indian world, you have karma. Karma is a reaction to action. One does something and gets some fruits, either good or bad, and these fruits are something to be suffered or enjoyed. But a pure way will not create karma. So again, this study of Wu Wei is very good, very important for the study of the Bhagavad Gita, and shows that it also promotes a type of natural action which is free from any reaction, which is clean, which is enlightened, and which is considered to be non-action, as if someone is not acting. One acts according to one's svabhava or nature.
And then remember that you elaborate this in your book, Exploring Bhagavad Gita, the example of charity. Yeah,
I brought the example of charity to exemplify that principle. Charity is giving something to someone else. But then, examining the motive, one can do charity in a pure way, out of duty, without any desire for a reward, without any desire for enjoyment, just give it in a pure way. But then one can also give charity out of rajas, passion, for name and fame. I give, but I look aside. You know, who's looking? Everyone knows my name. Maybe I get something in return. And also, someone can give a charity in tamas or in darkness, And if one does that, it gives to the wrong person, in the wrong time, in the wrong place, or he gives charity out of contempt. No, take. Not with a good heart, but with some contempt. So I try to exemplify the principle of the three gunas, the ethics, with this example of charity. But actually, you can exemplify that through so many things in life. Even riding bicycle, if you like, or driving a bus, or eating, or anything in life can be exemplified. It can exemplify the principle of the gunas, because the gunas are all pervading. They go everywhere. They influence everything a human being does.
Yeah, and to elaborate goodness a little simpler, I think that you compared to a 3-floor building in your book. Is that right?
Yeah, that is a little complicated, but I did that. I analyzed the Bhagavad Gita. That was my main contribution, or one of my main contributions in that book. And what I did is that, many people say that the Bhagavad Gita is not a consistent philosophy. They say it's wisdom. It has many wise things to say, it touches the heart, but it's not consistent. So I exemplify that by looking at the Bhagavad Gita through the three stories conception, you can see how it speaks in 3 different languages. The first one is the humanistic language, and the second one is like the yoga language, in between language, and the third one is that the liberated language. If I would have to look for a Chinese counterpart, that would be Buddhism. Buddhism would have that concept of hierarchical reality, that you have this reality which is how to say, worldly, not absolute, and you have the other contingent, perhaps is the word, and you have the other reality which is completely different or liberated. So that will be also, if we compare to Buddhism, a way to conceptualize the Gita. So then you have 3 stories, it's like a house of 3 stories, and you have a ladder of action connecting these stories. Means I take my action, and my action is according to my duty or dharma. It can be my professional action as a teacher. It can also be my family or personal duty as a father, for example. And I try to sublimate the motives of my action. I try to do it higher and higher, and by doing it higher and higher, I come to a higher platform, I climb up the ladder, and I move between the stories of the house, from the lower stage to the higher stage.
So what can we achieve when we climb to the highest floor?
Well, here you have something different in Indian and Chinese thought, because in the Indian thought, you have moksha, which means to leave this world altogether. Just leave this samsara, this birth and death. And in the Chinese thought, I would call it humanistic spiritualism, like the Junzi. It reaches humanistic spiritualism in action, but it does not imply that giving up rebirth. So there's no exact correlation between Indian and Chinese here, because in the Indian version you have this freedom from samsara. Of course, in Buddhism you do have it. Buddhism, which has become Chinese, came from India but has become Chinese. Buddhism does think in terms of discontinuing one's transmigration in samsara. repeated birth and death.
Yeah, and in your book you mentioned that the reader told that a person had better be a brahmachari at first.
Brahmacharya.
Yeah, that means to be cognitive of Brahman.
Yeah, well, this refers to the Vedic social system, according to which one goes through 4 stages of life: brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasi. That's the classical Vedic social structure, that in the first part of life one is a brahmachari, does austerity, lives very humbly, goes to beg food, studies the scriptures, and that builds up a good character. Then in the next stage, one becomes a grihastha, marries, becomes a family man, and then does business, maintains society. Then the next stage, once the children grew up, one becomes a vanaprastha, which means a forest dweller. It's a more preliminary stage of renunciation, and eventually one becomes sannyasi and leaves the world altogether to die detached. That's the basic theory of Vedic life, Vedic social structure.
So what yoga tells us not only to be self-cultivation, but also related to the harmony of the society, right?
Yeah. Yoga practice also has strong ethical practice, which contributes to society. And the first parts are yama, niyama. I mean, the first one is yama is ahimsa, means non-violence. Satya means truth. Asteya means non-stealing. Brahmacharya, which you mentioned, is celibacy, which is also there in Taoism, by the way. And aparigraha means non-accumulation. We heard in the conference by the last speaker, Professor Dipti Tripathi, about consumerism and how yoga promotes non-consumerism, or aparigraha, non-accumulation, how to be happy with very little. So that is also a philosophy which educates people to be happy and content with very little possessions.
Yeah, I think that about yoga, maybe we have a lot to say, but it cannot be explained totally in 20 minutes, I think. So thank you for your time, and I think you will have opportunity to talk with Mr. Pan. I think tomorrow you can talk more about that.
I hope so.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Yeah, especially when you're not feeling so well today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the kind interview. Thank you.